I have not always been a lover of poetry, but I am now, and I can no longer imagine my life without it. There was a time that I regarded classic poetry as something scholarly and inaccessible, to be enjoyed, if you could call it that, by very bookish types who took some satisfaction in some emotionally detached academic analysis of fancy words. It's hard for me to relate to or even describe that past version of myself now, but it did once exist. For me and my attitude toward poetry, there were two major turning points. The first came when, decades ago, I was hosting a book group at my house, and on one particular occasion, members of the group were asked to share a favorite poem. Among the guests was my friend Leonard Peikoff, who read aloud Alfred Tennyson's Rizpah, from his heart and through tears. And I listened, on the edge of my seat and with chills. The vocabulary, the syntax, and the imagery of this poem make it challenging to take in on first reading. And had I encountered it on the page, I might not have. But hearing it voiced by one who adored it and understood it to its core created a bridge of understanding that I could more easily cross, hand in hand with him. Rizpah is a narrative poem about a woman whose spirited son is arrested for a petty theft, unjustly convicted, and sentenced to public hanging. Night after dark night, this frail old woman defies the authorities, braves the storms on the downs, and goes to the foot of the gibbet to collect the bones of her beloved son. I was pregnant with my first child at the time, so you can imagine how hauntingly moving this story was to me. And when we arrived at the following lines, I sobbed.
Flesh of my flesh was gone, but bone of my bone was left. I stole them all from the lawyers. And will you call it a theft? My baby, the bones that had sucked me, the bones that had laughed and had cried. Theirs? Oh no, they are mine, not theirs. They had moved in my side.
In that moment, I saw poetry in all its potential. I realized it had always been as if some unyielding barrier kept the words contained, and once it was cracked, they would positively erupt with vital meaning and emotional power. The next of my turning points was a much more protracted one. It came through 20 years of reading and teaching. I went on a quest to discover more poems that had the power of Rizpah, and to provide my students with those poems and with a method for uncovering their meaning. It was a process I labored through on my own, and then stumbled through an attempt to formalize in the best principles I could. I have since lectured on this subject for adults. Then, just a few weeks ago, I discovered a book that might have saved me all my trouble, called Sound and Sense, An Introduction to Poetry. I was astonished how much I discovered in common between this book and my own patched-up principles about what poetry is, how to discover it, and why it will enrich your life. This book does a masterful job of building that bridge for the uninitiated to learn the power of poetry, while introducing you to many forgotten gems in the process. I wish I'd known about it long ago, but I'm glad I know about it now. And for fun, I thought I'd create a series of videos in which I share its insights with you. Part 1 will be on its way soon. Meanwhile, if you want to hear Rizpah in its entirety, the true story behind it, and an account of the reasons it moves me so much, go to readwithmesalon.com and download the Read With Me app. It's an app I created to help people learn how to passionately connect with the classics, and you'll find Rizpah among them.